Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to completely reframe how you think about political intrigue. We often hear the word politics, and we immediately picture, well, boring bureaucracy, right? Endless committee meetings, and those incredibly dry policy debates. But today, we're stripping all of that away. We're going to look at political intrigue for what it truly is: a thrilling, high-stakes battle for informational advantage. Whether it's happening in an ancient Senate, a modern election, or a massive fantasy novel, political intrigue is, at its core, an information heist. We have a very clear roadmap for our explainer today. 1. What is political intrigue? 2. The psychology of power. 3. The ancient playbook. 4. History's greatest conspiracies. And finally, 5. Intrigue as entertainment. Section 1. What is political intrigue? Let's dive right in.
If you follow the news or history, you probably hear the word cabal used all the time to describe a shadowy group of string pullers. Well, what's fascinating is that this word was actually popularized by a very real, very historical group in 17th century England. King Charles II formed a ministry in 1668, and the initials of its 5 key members, Clifford, Arlington, Buckingham, Ashley, and Lauderdale, literally spelled out Cabal. This incredibly tight-knit group operated in deep secrecy. They bypassed Parliament entirely to help sign the Secret Treaty of Dover, which allied England to France behind the scenes in exchange for hidden funds. They were the absolute definition of a semi-secret political clique controlling the flow of information. It was basically the ultimate 17th century group chat.
So, the crucial takeaway here is that political intrigue isn't just about politicians passing laws or signing treaties. As the team over at Writing Excuses brilliantly points out, these situations are actually mysteries. They're heists of information. The whole shebang is about a shifting balance of power. The person who holds the informational advantage, the one who knows the deep secrets, the true motivations, and the hidden alliances, they're the ones controlling the chessboard. Everyone else? They're just blundering in the dark, reacting to moves they don't even fully understand yet. Section 2. The psychology of power. Now that we know what it is, let's look at the scientific psychology behind the people who naturally gravitate toward pulling these strings. Modern research, like this massive recent study from the University of Amsterdam that looked at 40 national elections, shows us that leaders exhibiting the dark triad of personality traits objectively deepen societal divides. We're talking about narcissism with its excessive self-focus and constant need for validation, psychopathy, which is characterized by emotional coldness and a complete lack of empathy, and of course, Machiavellianism. When a political leader exhibits high levels of Machiavellianism, meaning they're ruthlessly strategic, manipulative, and highly goal-driven, they act as a massive catalyst for what scientists call effective polarization. Essentially, they use their informational advantage to deliberately deepen emotional hostility between their own supporters and the opposition. They literally weaponize information to make us angrier at each other, purely because a divided populace is so much easier to manipulate. Now, what's truly wild is the man whose name became synonymous with this dark psychology, Niccolò Machiavelli. He's often viewed as the ultimate devilish manipulator, right? His famous 1513 book, The Prince, is practically a how-to manual for tyrants. It suggests that a successful statesman has to be a great liar and deceiver, and that the ends always justify the means. But history is full of secrets. Some historians argue that The Prince was actually a brilliant, dry satire intended to expose the ruthless behavior of despots, specifically the Medici family who, get this, had actually tortured Machiavelli just months before he wrote it. This brilliantly illustrates the duality of the man. If we compare The Prince to his much longer, heavily researched, and far more balanced work, The Discourses, we see a completely different thinker. In the Discourses, he heavily praises republics, he advocates for the greater good of the citizenry, and he explicitly states that using deceit in peacetime is detestable. He even writes that the faults of the people spring directly from the faults of their rulers. It's an incredible historical twist. The guy who gave us the exact term for dark manipulative political intrigue might have actually been a suppressed Republican trying to warn us about those very tactics all along. Section 3. The Ancient Playbook. Let's look back and see how this playbook of power, secrecy, and deceit has been utilized by empires to maintain dominance. Honestly, the Byzantine Empire practically wrote the textbook on informational advantage. Their diplomacy was an absolute masterclass in psychological manipulation. If you visited Constantinople as a foreign ambassador, you weren't just getting a friendly tour, you were subjected to intense sensory overload. Brightly lit rooms, terrifying acoustic sounds, and even mechanical roaring golden lions by the throne. All of it designed purely to overwhelm you and project absolute power. But their true genius was in information control. Take Emperor Heraclius. He once intercepted a message from his Persian rival ordering the execution of a general. Heraclius didn't just destroy the message, no, he forged an extra 400 names onto the execution list and sent it right along, instantly provoking a massive rebellion against his enemy without swinging a single sword. Now that is a perfect information heist. Meanwhile, over in ancient Rome, we see how the wealthy elite protect their power when their informational advantage actually fails. The Roman Senate famously operated under the banner of SPQR, the Senate and the People of Rome, projecting this nice, neat image of democratic harmony. But in reality, it was a fiercely guarded oligarchy. When the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, served as tribunes and attempted to pass laws redistributing wealth and public land back to poor rural farmers who had lost everything to massive elite megafarms, well, the illusion shattered. Wealthy senators, absolutely terrified of losing their capital, whipped up violent mobs and orchestrated the brutal murders of the brothers in 133 and 121 BC. When the political game didn't go their way, they just flipped the board and resorted to brute force.
Section 4. History's greatest conspiracies.
When the stakes are this high, informational advantage isn't just about winning an election or passing a law. It can utterly ruin lives. Take the Dreyfus affair, a devastating political conspiracy fueled by deep-seated anti-Semitism that completely tore the French Third Republic apart. In 1894, Captain Alfred Dreyfus was wrongfully convicted of treason and sent off to Devil's Island, which was a brutal penal colony. 2 years later, a counter-espionage officer named Picquart actually discovered the real culprit, a major named Esterhazy. But the military suppressed the evidence to protect their own reputations. It wasn't until the famous writer Émile Zola published his explosive open letter J'accuse in 1898 that public opinion forced a massive reckoning, finally leading to Dreyfus's exoneration in 1906. So how did they frame him so effectively in the first place? They used a secret dossier. The military elite essentially created a deadly Rube Goldberg machine of lies. To retroactively justify Dreyfus's life sentence, prosecutors forged documents and actively concealed real, highly sensitive correspondence between German and Italian attachés in Paris. By restricting access to the truth and fabricating their own evidence, the military maintained an informational advantage that sent an innocent man away for a decade. And in the process, they split families straight down the middle, bitterly dividing the entire country. Section 5. Intrigue as entertainment. Finally, let's explore how these dark historical realities, the backstabbing, the forged letters, the secret treaties, have evolved into such a beloved trope in our modern storytelling. Why do we love this so much? Think about your favorite shows or books right now. From the incredibly deadly royal courts of Shakespeare to the high school hallways of modern teen dramas, we are just captivated by the tension. We love the dramatic irony of seeing characters blundering in the dark, completely unaware of the larger game being played, while we get to watch someone else expertly control the chessboard. It's the thrill of the mystery, trying to figure out exactly who knows what, when the power is going to shift, and who is going to be left holding the bag. If you want to understand how the best writers craft this, there's a simple 3-step process. The biggest mistake writers make is giving their villain an insanely convoluted 17-step master plan right from the jump. Good intrigue doesn't start complicated, it starts simple. The villain has a straightforward goal and an informational advantage. They know a secret the heroes don't. The complexity should grow organically. As the heroes uncover clues and throw up unexpected obstacles, the villain is forced to compensate, cover their tracks, forge a few metaphorical execution orders, and adapt. That's what makes the tension feel real and earned, rather than just a confusing mess. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to help you practice identifying political intrigue everywhere you look. Take a classic, simple story, like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Now assume that the fairy tale we all know is just a cover story, a polite front for the public. What was the real informational heist happening behind the scenes? Why was she really in that house? Who sent her to check the temperatures of that porridge? And what rival woodland faction was she working for? Once you start viewing the world and the stories we tell through the lens of who holds the information and who holds the power, you are going to see political intrigue absolutely everywhere. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.